My mom called on Christmas Eve and said, "Kira, we didn't know you were coming this year. Like forgetting your own daughter is a scheduling mistake." I'm Kira Hartley, a single mom and pediatric nurse. And for as long as I can remember, my family has accidentally left me off the Christmas invite list. Asterisk, I'm Kira Hartley, 34 years old, and I've gotten used to being the one who adjusts. I adjust my schedule at the hospital when a coworker's kid gets sick. I adjust my budget when the electric bill jumps. I adjust my expectations when my family acts like my life is something they can pencil in later. If there's room out most days, I can handle it. I am a pediatric nurse, which means my work is loud and urgent and full of tiny, stubborn lives that refuse to cooperate. I'm also a single mom to my son, Rowan, who's 9 and has this way of looking at me like he can see straight through whatever story I'm telling myself. My apartment is small, clean, and always half covered in the evidence of a kid who lives there. Library books on the coffee table, Lego pieces that attack your feet in the dark, and drawings taped to the fridge like they're museum pieces. Rowan is my best thing. He's also the reason the holidays hit me differently than they used to. When I was younger, Christmas was about surviving the day, smiling at the right moments, laughing at the jokes that weren't funny, pretending I didn't notice who got the first hug, the best gift, the seat closest to the kitchen where the real conversations happened. I could tell myself it was just normal family dynamics. Everybody has quirks. Everybody has tension, but when you have a child, you stop being able to pretend your pain exists in a private room where it can't touch anyone else. In early December, our lives start to change in small ways. Rowan's school sends home flyers about the holiday concert. The neighborhood puts up lights. The grocery store starts playing music that makes strangers either nostalgic or irritated. At the hospital, parents bring in kids wearing reindeer pajamas, and I watch exhausted moms and dads trying to create magic while their world is falling apart. I'm not judging them. I'm one of them. Every year, I tell myself I'm going to make Christmas feel warm for Rowan, even if it's just the two of us. We do our little traditions, hot cocoa, a movie night where he gets to pick the movie, even if it's something loud and chaotic, and decorating our tiny tree with ornaments he made in kindergarten that look like craft glue disasters. And still, every year, some part of me reaches for my family. My mom, Deirdre, is the kind of woman who keeps her hair perfect and her voice calm, even when she's being cruel. She doesn't yell. She edits. She can cut you down with a sentence that sounds like concern. "Honey, you always take things so personally. You know we love you. Let's not make this into a big thing." My dad, Walt, is quieter. He's not a bad man in the obvious ways. He's just someone who has spent decades letting my mom decide what reality is, and then acting like he's relieved he doesn't have to have an opinion. My sister Bren is the star. Always has been. She's 3 years older than me, and she learned early how to perform perfect daughter in a way that got rewarded. She hosts. She decorates. She posts pictures. She's the one people point at and say, "Bren really knows how to bring the family together." My brother Gavin is the type who makes everything a joke because jokes give him control. If you're hurt, it's because you can't take a joke. If you're angry, it's because you're dramatic. He can make you feel guilty for having a normal human reaction, and then act confused when you stop talking. And then there's my grandpa Milo. He's 81, sharp as a tack, and he still calls me kiddo, like he's got me tucked safely into a pocket where nobody can reach me. He's my dad's dad, and he's the only one in my family who asks questions and actually waits for the answer. If I'm honest, Grandpa Milo is the reason I kept trying for as long as I did. Because when he's there, I feel seen. He notices the way Rowan hangs back when adults get loud. He notices when my mom steers conversations away from my life like it's an embarrassing detour. He notices when Bryn accepts compliments like oxygen. He also notices when I'm missing. The pattern started years ago. After I had Rowan, it was never announced like a decision. It was more like a series of little misunderstandings that all landed on the same outcome. One year, I found out they'd done Christmas brunch at Bryn's because I saw a photo online. Everyone was in matching pajamas, holding mimosas, smiling like a holiday card. Rowan and I were at home eating cereal, and I was trying to convince myself I preferred the quiet. Another year, my mom told me, "We figured you'd want to start your own traditions now," like being excluded was actually a gift she was giving me. Once I drove to my parents' house on Christmas Day after a long shift. I brought cookies and a small present for my dad. My mom opened the door and blinked like she was surprised I was real. The living room looked like a wrapping paper explosion had happened without me. Bryn was there with her husband. Silas and Gavin was there, and everyone had that guilty, caught expression for half a second before it smoothed back into normal. My mom said, "Oh, honey, we didn't know you were coming." I stood there with my hands full, and I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. This is the part people don't understand if they've never lived it. It's not one big, obvious act of cruelty. It's death by paper cuts. It's being left out in ways that are easy to deny. It's being made to feel needy for noticing. It's being told you're loved while being treated like an extra. For a long time, I played my role. I kept my tone light. I accepted excuses. I told myself I didn't want to be the kind of person who makes holidays stressful. I thought if I stayed sweet, stayed flexible, stayed grateful, they'd eventually meet me halfway. But Rowan changed the math because he watches. He listens. He remembers last Christmas after it happened again. Rowan looked up at me while I was washing dishes and asked, "Are we the part of the family that comes later?" The water was running too loud, and I let it keep running because I didn't trust my voice. I turned around and forced a smile. "No, buddy. Sometimes grown-ups just get mixed up." Rowan nodded, but his eyes didn't. He went quiet in the way kids go quiet when they're filing something away. That night, when he was asleep, I sat on the edge of my couch and stared at the dark TV screen like it might tell me what to do. I felt embarrassed, which made me angry. Not at them, at myself. I had been letting my family teach my child that we were optional. Early this December, I tried to focus on what I could control. I picked up extra shifts to cover the cost of gifts. I bought Rowan a science kit he'd been begging for. I sent my grandpa a card early because he likes to hold things in his hands, not just read a text. That my friend Jessa at work caught me looking at holiday schedules and said, "You're doing that thing with your face." "What thing?" I asked. "The one where you're pretending you're fine," she said. "You're not fine." I wanted to brush her off. I wanted to say it was nothing, but the truth was sitting right under my skin, hot and tender. I wanted one simple thing that shouldn't be hard to want. I wanted my son to feel like he belongs, and I wanted, just once, to stop feeling like I had to earn an invitation to my own family. By mid-December, the waiting started to feel like an itch under my skin. In past years, I told myself I was being practical, that I was giving everyone time to coordinate, that families were busy. The truth was simpler. I was afraid that if I asked directly and got the same answer, I'd finally have to admit it was real. Rowan and I were eating takeout at the coffee table because I hadn't had the energy to cook after a double shift. He was telling me about a classmate who brought candy canes for everyone, and I was nodding at the right places while my phone sat face up beside my drink like a dare. Finally, I wiped my hands on a napkin and texted my mom, "Hey, what time should Rowan and I come by Christmas Eve? I can bring dessert." I stared at the message after I hit send. It was written the way I always wrote to her, helpful, easy. Trying to earn my space without saying I was asking for it. Mom didn't respond right away. 10 minutes passed, 20. I told myself she was driving. She was shopping. She was busy being the kind of mom who had a clean house in December. Rowan glanced at my phone. Are we going to Grandma Deirdre's this year? The way he said her name, careful and hopeful, made my stomach tighten. Probably, I lied. Because I still believed in probably, even after years of evidence, when Mom's reply finally came in. It was 2 sentences that knocked the breath out of me. Oh, honey, Bryn is doing something small this year. We assumed you'd have plans. I read it 3 times like the words might change if I looked hard enough. Something small. Assumed I'd have plans. The way she wrote it made it sound like I'd neglected to RSVP to a party I was never invited to. I typed back, deleted, typed again. What do you mean small? I'm family. We don't have other plans. She didn't answer. Not for another hour. Not until I was brushing Rowan's teeth and he was humming to himself. Completely unaware of the adult cruelty unfolding 2 feet away, my phone buzzed. Sweetheart, don't get upset. It's just going to be immediate family. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Immediate family. Like I was a second cousin, like Rowan was a neighbor kid. I stepped into my bedroom and called her. I needed to hear her say it out loud because text messages left too much room for pretending Mom picked up on the second ring. Voice bright, like we were discussing holiday recipes. Hi, honey. Mom, I said, and my voice shook in a way I hated. What does immediate family mean? A pause, the kind that told me she was choosing words. It's just easier this year. Bryn's hosting and she wants it simple. I am immediate family, I said. Rowan is immediate family. Another pause, longer this time. Then she exhaled like I'd made her day harder. Kira, you know what I mean. There it was. Not confusion. Not a mistake. Not forgetting. A decision wrapped in polite packaging. I forced myself to ask the question that always made me feel pathetic. So you're saying we're not invited? Mom made a small sound that could have been sympathy if she'd meant it. It's not like that. What is it like? I asked. She shifted into the tone she used when she wanted the conversation to end without accountability. We assumed you'd want to do your own thing. You always have so much going on. I could hear the TV in the background at her house. Could picture my dad in his recliner, letting her handle it the way he always did. Does Dad know you're telling me this? I asked. He agrees it's for the best, she said quickly. Too quickly, I swallowed. Okay, I said, because I didn't trust myself not to beg. And I refused to beg. When I came back into the living room, Rowan was sitting cross-legged, building a tower out of coasters. He looked up at my face like he'd been watching for the weather. What did Grandma say? He asked. I opened my mouth and nothing clean came out. She said, they're doing something small this year. I managed. Rowan's hands slowed. Are we going? I should have protected him with a soft lie. Instead, I told the truth in a way that still tried to cushion it. No, buddy. Not this time. He nodded once, and I watched him absorb it like a grown-up. That was the part that made me want to scream. Kids are supposed to be disappointed loudly. They're not supposed to learn disappointment quietly. The next day, the situation went from hurtful to undeniable. I was on my lunch break at the hospital, sitting in the staff room with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. My phone buzzed with a message from my brother Gavin, a photo. A screenshot at first. My brain didn't register what it was. Then I saw the header, a group chat title with a Christmas tree emoji and my family name. Under it was a message from Bren. Christmas brunch at my place, 10 a.m. Christmas Day. Pajamas encouraged. Deirdre bringing cinnamon rolls. Walt bringing the mimosas. Beneath that was a list of names tagged for RSVP. Deirdre, Walt, Bryn, Silas, Gavin. Not me. Not Rowan. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could feel heat crawling up my neck, that specific humiliation that makes you feel both furious and small. Then another message popped up from Gavin. Oops, wrong thread. And right after it, don't make it weird. My hand started to shake. Not the dramatic kind of shaking people notice, but the kind where your body is trying to dump adrenaline and you're stuck sitting still. I stared at the screenshot until the words blurred. I didn't want to call my mom again. I didn't want another carefully worded dismissal. So I called the person who was actually hosting. Bryn answered on speaker in her kitchen. I could tell by the clatter in the background. Hey, Kira, what's up? I kept my voice even because I knew if I sounded emotional, she'd use it as proof. Gavin accidentally sent me the Christmas brunch details. Bryn sighed, already annoyed. Okay, so it's not small, I said. It's everyone. It's the family. Except me. It's not like that, Bryn said, using Mom's exact words, like they'd been handed a script. What is it like, Bryn? My voice tightened. Because it looks like you made a list and left me off. She laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because laughter was her way of making my feelings seem unreasonable. Kira, you're always so intense around the holidays. I'm intense because you keep excluding me, I said. I'm not asking for a throne. I'm asking for an invitation. There was a beat of silence. Then Bryn's husband, Silas, cut in from somewhere nearby, his voice casual, dismissive. We'll catch you next time? Next time. Like I was a distant friend they might see if schedules aligned. Is Rowan invited? I asked because I needed her to hear his name. Bryn's tone cooled. Kira, don't do this. Don't do what? I pressed. Notice. Ask care? She lowered her voice like she was trying to sound reasonable. We just want a peaceful holiday. You always bring tension. I almost laughed because the irony was sharp enough to cut. I wasn't bringing tension. I was reacting to it. I hung up without saying goodbye that evening. Rowan sat at the table working on homework while I moved around the kitchen like a ghost, putting away dishes that were already clean, wiping down counters that didn't need wiping. My mind kept replaying the screenshot, the list, the certainty of my absence. Rowan looked up from his paper. Mom? Yeah. He hesitated, then asked in a small voice, did we do something bad? The question landed like a punch, not because it was dramatic, but because it was logical. In a child's world, exclusion means you did something to deserve it. I crouched beside him and put my hands on his shoulders. No, absolutely not, I said, firm enough that he'd believe it. You didn't do anything wrong. He searched my face. Then why don't they want us there? I couldn't answer that without breaking something in him, or breaking something in me. I stood up, walked into my bedroom, and shut the door. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my phone until my eyes stung. In that quiet, a new feeling rose up underneath the hurt. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity. I had spent years trying to be included by people who benefited from my silence. And now my son was learning to measure his worth by their attention. I wiped my face, took one steady breath, and made myself a promise I didn't fully understand yet, but knew I had to keep. Rowan would never again watch me beg for love that came with conditions. The morning after Rowan asked me if we'd done something bad, I drove to work with my hands locked tight on the steering wheel. Like if I loosened my grip, the whole truth would spill out all over the dashboard. The screenshot kept flashing in my mind, not as anger anymore, but as evidence. A list, names, plans, my absence typed in clean black letters. At the hospital, I moved through my shift on muscle memory. Check vitals. Change dressings. Reassure anxious parents. Smile at kids who are brave even when they were hurting. I was good at caring for other people. I just was not good at doing it without abandoning myself in the process. During my break, I sat in the staff room and opened the notes app on my phone. I typed one sentence like a vow. Rowan will not watch me beg. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I opened a spreadsheet I'd kept for years, a quiet little file labeled someday. It started as a joke back when I was still married, back when I thought we might buy a starter house together. After the divorce, it became my emergency plan. I added to it whenever I could. Tax returns, extra shifts, money I didn't spend because I was too tired to go out. I'd always imagined someday as a safety net. That day, it turned into a doorway. I typed small cabin near me for sale into a search bar and expected to close the tab out of embarrassment. Instead, I scrolled. I looked at places that were too expensive, too far, too perfect. Then I saw it, a modest A-frame a little under 2 hours away, tucked up near a state forest. Not a postcard mansion, a real person's house. Weathered siding, a steep roof built for snow, and a porch that looked like it had held 1,000 quiet cups of coffee. The listing photos showed a wood stove, knotty pine walls, and a living room window that framed the mountains like a painting. It felt ridiculous to want it immediately. It also felt like oxygen. I texted my friend Jessa at work because she was the only person in my life who told me the truth without making me feel ashamed for needing it. Can you talk? I wrote. She called 2 minutes later. If this is about your family, I'm already mad. It is, I admitted, but I'm not calling to vent. I'm calling because I'm thinking about doing something a little unhinged. Jessa didn't hesitate. Say it. I found a cabin. I could maybe buy it. There was a pause, and I braced for her to tell me I was stressed and spiraling. Instead, her voice went soft in that way that meant she was serious. Kira, that is not unhinged. That is you building a life where you stop getting punished for existing. I have a kid, I said. Like that alone should disqualify me from any bold decision. Exactly, she shot back. You have a kid. You need stability, not Deirdre's mood swings. Hearing my mom's name spoken like a fact instead of a sacred thing made my throat tighten. That night, after Rowan went to bed, I pulled out every document I could find. Pay stubs, tax returns, my credit report. I checked my savings again and again, like the numbers might vanish if I blinked. I filled out an online mortgage pre-approval form with hands that kept going cold. 2 days later, on my lunch break, I took a call from a loan officer in the hospital parking lot. You're a strong candidate, she said. Steady income, consistent savings. We can look at first-time homebuyer options since this would be your primary residence. Primary residence. The word sounded too grown-up, too permanent. Like I was claiming a future I hadn't asked permission to have. Scheduled a viewing for the following weekend and told myself I was just looking. Just gathering information. Just doing what responsible adults do. But the second I walked into that A-frame, I knew I was lying to myself. It smelled like cedar and old heat. The floors creaked in places like a house clearing its throat. There was a narrow staircase that led to a loft big enough for a kid's bed and a pile of blankets. The kitchen was small but bright, with a window over the sink that made the snow outside look clean instead of threatening. The realtor, a friendly woman named Talia, chatted about property lines and the age of the roof. I nodded, asked the right questions, pretended my heart wasn't thundering. In the living room, I walked to the big window and pictured Rowan waking up on Christmas morning and seeing mountains instead of our apartment parking lot. I pictured decorating a tree without worrying someone would criticize the way I hung the lights. I pictured silence that felt safe. When I got back to my car, I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, palms pressed to the steering wheel, and let the truth settle. My family had been training me to accept less. This house felt like more. That night, I asked Rowan a question that mattered, but I framed it like an adventure so he wouldn't feel the weight of my decision. How would you feel about spending Christmas somewhere new this year? I said, casual as I could manage. His eyes lit up immediately. Like a hotel? Not a hotel, I said. More like a little mountain place. Rowan sat up straighter. With snow? Probably, I said. He grinned. Then his expression shifted to something careful. Are Grandma Deirdre and Grandpa Walt coming? The fact that he asked it so gently made my chest ache. I took a breath. No, buddy. It's going to be us. He studied my face, and I could tell he was testing whether us was a sad answer or a good one. Then he said, Can we have pancakes on Christmas morning? Yes, I said, and my voice cracked on the word because it was the simplest request in the world, and it felt like a new beginning. We can have pancakes. I made an offer on the house the next day. I expected negotiations and delays, but everything moved faster than I was ready for. Inspection, appraisal, paperwork that made my eyes cross. A signature here, initials there, another form explaining that, yes, I understood what a mortgage was. I understood. I also understood that my life could not stay the way it had been. I did not tell my mom. I did not tell Bryn. I did not tell Gavin. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to throw it in their faces, to prove I was not the family charity case they could ignore until they needed something. But I knew how they would respond. They'd turn it into a joke or an argument or a reason I was difficult. They would try to drag me back into the same old roles. So I told only 2 people. Jessa, who helped me find a used kitchen table on Facebook Marketplace and said, This is you buying a future, not buying revenge. And Grandpa Milo, he called on a Tuesday evening while I was packing a box with mismatched ornaments and Rowan's handmade paper snowflakes. I almost let it go to voicemail because I didn't trust myself to talk without crying. But Milo had always been the one person I didn't want to lie to. Kiddo, he said, you got a plan for Christmas? I held the phone against my ear and stared at the open box like it was proof I could do this. Yeah, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. I do. Let's hear it. I bought a little place in the mountains, I told him. It's small. It's not fancy, but it's ours. Silence. My stomach flipped, and for a second I braced for disappointment. Then Milo chuckled, low and warm. Good, he said simply. Good? I repeated, almost laughing from relief. Good, he said again, firmer. Tell me where to drive. I swallowed hard. You want to come? I don't want you and that boy sitting alone, pretending it doesn't hurt, Milo said. And I don't want you driving. Up there without someone who knows how to stack. Firewood. I covered my mouth with my free hand because the kindness. And his voice hit a part of me I kept numb on. Purpose. Okay, I managed. Okay, I'll text you the address once we close. When the keys finally landed in my palm a few days before Christmas, they were heavier than they should have been. Not because of the metal, but because of what they represented. I drove up with Rowan on the weekend before Christmas. The car packed with blankets, groceries, board games, and a tiny artificial tree strapped in the back seat. Rowan sang along to the radio, making up half the lyrics, and I kept glancing at him like I needed to memorize the look of him being happy without trying to earn it at the house. We turned on the heat, lit the wood stove, and hung our first strand of lights across the porch. Rowan placed the star on top of the tree like it was a job only he could do. When he stepped back to look at it, he whispered, "This feels like a real Christmas." I didn't correct him. I didn't say every Christmas was real. I knew what he meant. It felt like we belonged somewhere, That night, after Rowan fell asleep in the loft, I stood in the quiet living room and stared out at the dark mountains. My phone buzzed with a missed call from my mom. Then another from Bren. I watched them light up the screen and disappear. For once, I didn't rush to make things better. I let the silence hold, and I started building a Christmas that did not require anyone's permission. Christmas Eve in the mountains felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in years. The A-frame was warm in a way my apartment never managed. The kind of heat that settled into your bones. Rowan was in the loft in his pajamas, building a snow fort out of couch cushions he'd dragged upstairs one by one, grunting like it was serious construction work. Grandpa Milo sat in the armchair by the wood stove with a mug of cocoa, the firelight turning his weathered face soft-out outside. The snow came down steady, fat flakes swirling in the porch light. Inside, the only sounds were the crackle of the stove and Rowan laughing at himself. I told myself this was it. This was our Christmas. No waiting for a phone call. No reading between lines. No getting dressed up to be ignored. Then my phone started buzzing on the counter like it was possessed. First Mom. Then Bren. Then Gavin. I stared at the screen until Milo's voice cut through the quiet. "You gonna answer that, kiddo?" Rowan paused upstairs. I heard his footsteps on the loft ladder, careful and slow. Like he didn't want to make noise, but he wanted to know what was happening. I don't know, I admitted. And my throat tightened in that familiar way. The way it always did when my family reached for me. Not with love, with need. Milo didn't tell me what to do. He just said, "Whatever you choose it on purpose." I picked up the phone and answered my mom's call. "Kira," Deirdre said, breathless. Her voice was strained in a way that made it sound like there was real chaos behind her, not the tidy kind she usually curated. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" I asked, and I hated how quickly my body leaned toward solving it. "Bryn's pipes burst," she said. "There's water everywhere. The ceiling is dripping. It's a disaster." I closed my eyes and counted one slow breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is everyone okay?" Yes, everyone's fine," she said. "But the house is not fine. We can't stay here either because the roads are getting bad and Walt doesn't want to drive in this." Her words sped up, urgency stacked on urgency. "Gavin said you have some sort of place up there? A cabin?" My stomach dropped, not because I didn't believe it, but because it confirmed what I'd already learned. They always found me when they needed something. How does Gavin know about my house? I asked, a pause. Then Deirdre said, "He saw it listed online, I think. He put the pieces together." That was not true. Gavin didn't put pieces together. Someone had been watching me. Someone had been talking about me. I pictured my brother scrolling real estate listings out of spite or curiosity, then passing the information along like it belonged to them. Milo's eyes stayed on me. Calm and sharp. Rowan appeared at the top of the loft ladder, peeking down with wide eyes. "Mom, who is it?" I covered the phone. "It's Grandma," I told him. Rowan's face did something small and complicated. Hope, then fear of being disappointed by hope. He went quiet. I brought the phone back to my ear. "Mom," I said carefully, "you told me Christmas was immediate family." Deirdre's tone shifted, tightening. "Kira, this is not the time." "It is exactly the time," I said. My voice surprised me. It didn't shake. "You didn't have room for me at brunch, but you have room for yourselves when you need a place to land." "You're making this into a thing," she snapped. "I didn't make it into anything," I said. "You did. You all did. Over and over." I could hear my father in the background, his voice muffled. "Deirdre, what's she saying?" Mom covered the receiver, then came back. "We just need somewhere to go for tonight. We'll figure everything else out later." That sentence was the whole family in one line. Use me now. Discuss my feelings later, maybe. Before I could respond, headlights washed over the living room wall. A car door slammed. Then another. Tires crunched in the driveway. Milo's eyebrows lifted. Well, he said, looks like they didn't wait for permission. A knock hit the front door, loud and confident. Like the person on the porch owned the place, Bryn's voice carried through the wood. Kira, open up. It's freezing out here. My heart started pounding, but it wasn't panic anymore. It was adrenaline mixed with something steadier underneath. Rowan climbed down the ladder and stood behind Milo's chair, one hand gripping the backrest. I reached for the door, then stopped short and slid the chain into place first. It was a small action, but it gave me a strange sense of control. I opened the door a few inches. Cold air rushed in. Bryn stood on the porch in a designer coat that looked expensive enough to be insulted by snow. Gavin was behind her, shoulders hunched, annoyed at the weather like it was personal. Mom stood slightly to the side, lips pressed tight. Already offended that I wasn't playing my part, Silas hovered near the steps, holding a bag. Looking around like the house was a rental he'd paid for, Bryn forced a bright smile. Surprise, she said, voice too cheerful. We had a situation. Pipes burst. Total nightmare. We're coming in. She reached for the chain like it was a mistake. I didn't move. Kira, Bryn said, her smile fading. Are you seriously chaining the door? Yes, I said. Because you didn't knock earlier this month when you made your Christmas list and left me off it? Gavin let out a sharp laugh. Oh my God, you're doing this right now? I'm doing it now because you always count on me not doing it, I said, Mom, single quotes, eyes narrowed. Kira, don't be cruel. Cruel. That word hit me like a slap because it was the one she used when I stopped being convenient. Rowan stepped forward into the edge of the light from the doorway. He didn't speak, but he didn't hide either. I pointed gently toward him. Do you see him? Do you understand what it does to a kid to watch his mother get treated like she's optional? Bryn's face tightened. This is not our fault. You're always taking things personally. It's personal, I said, and my voice stayed calm. It's my family. Silas tried to soften it with fake warmth. Come on, Kira. Let's just not make a big deal. It's Christmas Eve. I looked straight at him. It became a big deal when you decided next time was an acceptable way to talk to me. Gavin stepped closer to the door, peering past me at the warm living room. So what, you bought a whole house to prove a point? No, I said. I bought a house because I was tired of waiting to be wanted. Milo stood up behind me, slow but solid, like an oak tree deciding to move. He stepped into view. Dad, Mom said immediately, startled. What are you doing here? Spending Christmas with my granddaughter, Milo replied. His voice was quiet, but it had weight. Because she invited me. Mom's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes flicked to the chain, to my face, to Rowan. I took the moment before anyone could bulldoze it. If you want to come in, I said, here are the conditions. You apologize to me for excluding me. You apologize to Rowan for making him wonder what's wrong with us. No excuses. No jokes. No blaming me for reacting. Bryn's cheeks flushed. You are unbelievable, Gavin muttered. This is insane. Mom's expression hardened into something cold and tidy. So you're really going to turn your own family away in a snowstorm? I nodded once. I'm going to protect my son from learning that love means begging. For a second, no one spoke. The snow fell between us like static dot, and Milo said, calm as a judge, if you had treated her like family, you'd be inside already. Bryn looked at Mom like she expected Mom to fix it, to force me back into place. Mom looked at me like she was seeing a stranger who had stopped a bang. Finally, Bryn yanked her coat tighter. Fine, she snapped. We'll go to a hotel. Gavin shook his head as if I'd embarrassed him in public, even though they were the ones on my porch. Silas avoided my eyes. Mom lingered half a second longer. You'll regret this, she said softly, like a curse she could speak into existence. I held her gaze. I regretted the other way, I said. For years. Then I closed the door and slid the lock into place. The click sounded final, not angry, just clean. On the other side, I heard footsteps, then car doors, then engines fading into the snowy dark dot inside. Rowan let out a breath I didn't realize he'd been holding. He walked to me and wrapped his arms around my waist, tight and sudden. Did we do the right thing? He asked into my sweater. I put my hand on the back of his head and felt Milo's presence steady behind us. Double Q's. Yes, I said, and this time I meant it without forcing myself. We did. After I locked the door, I stood with my back against it like my body needed proof it was real. The house was quiet again, but my nerves were still loud. My hands were shaking, not from fear exactly, more from the shock of finally doing the thing I'd rehearsed in my head for years. Rowan stayed pressed against my side for a moment, then pulled back and looked up at me. Are they mad? He asked. Probably, I said honestly, because I was done pretending emotions didn't exist. But being mad doesn't make them right. Grandpa Milo eased back into his chair like the storm outside was just weather, not a metaphor. He patted the armrest. Kiddo, he said, come sit down before your knees give out. I sat, and the heat from the wood stove settled into my chest. Rowan climbed up next to me with a blanket, and Milo handed him a mug of cocoa like it was a ceremony. For the first time in my life, Christmas Eve didn't feel like a test I had to pass. We played a board game Rowan picked. Something loud and ridiculous where the rules changed halfway through. Rowan laughed so hard he snorted, then covered his mouth, embarrassed, until Milo laughed too and said, That's the good kind of laugh. Don't you dare apologize for it. Later, when Rowan started yawning, I tucked him into the loft. He didn't ask to call Grandma Deirdre. He didn't ask what we were missing. He just held my hand tighter than usual. Right before I turned off the light, he whispered, Mom? Yeah, buddy? Thank you for not opening the door. The sentence hit me so hard I had to sit on the edge of his bed. You should never have to thank me for that, I said. But I do, he answered, simple and certain. Because you did it? Downstairs. Milo poured himself a small cup of coffee and sat at the table like he'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. I could still feel the ghost of my mom's voice in my ears. The way she'd said I'd regret it, I braced myself for the guilt to arrive. Instead, what came was a strange, steady calm. I thought I'd feel horrible, I admitted. Milo didn't look surprised. That's because you've been trained to feel horrible any time you stop serving somebody else's comfort. I rubbed my palms over my jeans. I kept thinking if I stayed easy to love, they'd love me. Milo's eyes softened. Kiddo, people who require you to shrink are not confused. They are accustomed. I went to bed that night expecting to wake up heavy with sadness. But when morning came, the light on the snow outside turned the whole world pale gold, and the cabin felt like it was holding us gently. Rowan raced down the ladder in his socks and shouted, Pancakes! Like it was the most important word he'd ever learned. We made them together, messy and imperfect. He poured too many chocolate chips into the batter. Milo pretended to be scandalized and said, This is tyranny, then winked at Rowan when he thought I wasn't looking. We ate at our little table with a tiny tree glowing in the corner. And for once, I wasn't scanning the day for the moment it would go wrong. My phone, of course. Tried to ruin it. The text started mid-morning. From Gavin. Hope you're proud of yourself. From Bryn. You humiliated us. From Mom. I cannot believe you would do that to family. Dad is upset. That last line was the one that would have hooked me in the past, because my dad's disappointment always felt like the final verdict. I stared at it, thumb hovering, ready to type an explanation that would be ignored. Then Rowan asked, mouthful of pancake, "Do you have to answer them?" "No," I said, surprised by how good it felt to say it out loud. "I don't." Milo nodded once, like he'd been waiting to hear that exact word. I typed a single message to the family thread. Not a fight, not a speech, just a boundary that could stand on its own. I love you. I will not be excluded and then expected to fix things when you need me. If you want a relationship with me and Rowan, it starts with accountability and respect. Until then, please don't show up uninvited. Then I muted the chat. My chest felt tight for a moment, the old reflex to chase approval. But it passed. The quiet that followed wasn't lonely. It was clean. That afternoon, Milo asked me to sit with him by the window. He held an envelope, worn at the edges like it had been carried around for a long time. "I meant to give you this years ago," he said, "but I kept hoping your mother would change." Inside was a small photo, older than I was comfortable looking at. Me at maybe 8 or 9, standing on my parents' front step in a puffy coat, clutching a gift bag. The porch light was on. The door was closed. I stared at it, confused. When was this? Milo's jaw tightened. "One Christmas, your mother said you went back to your room because you were in a mood. I went outside to smoke and found you right there, waiting. You told me you didn't want to knock again because you didn't want to be annoying." My throat closed. I could remember the cold, the way the plastic handles of the gift bag cut into my fingers. I have forgotten the details, but my body recognized the feeling immediately. Milo turned the photo over. On the back, in his careful handwriting, was a single sentence: "You never belonged on the doorstep." I pressed the photo to my chest and let the grief come. Not the explosive kind, but the slow kind that finally gets permission to exist. Milo didn't rush me. He just sat there, solid and quiet, like a person who knew pain didn't need to be managed. Just witnessed, that evening, while Rowan played with his new science kit, my phone lit up with a notification from social media. I almost ignored it out of habit. Then I saw the name. Silas had posted a photo. A bright, cheerful holiday picture. Bryn's living room, their tree sparkling. Everyone in matching pajamas holding mugs. The caption read, "Christmas brunch prep. Family time." I stared at the image until my eyes went hot. No visible damage. No fans drying carpet. No torn out drywall. No sign of the disaster that sent them to my door in the snow. Rowan wandered over and looked at my face. "What is it?" I set the phone down carefully, like it might bite. "It means they lied," I said, voice steady in a way that surprised me. They weren't desperate. They were testing whether I'd still fold. Rowan frowned, processing it like a math problem. "So they just wanted to come here?" "Yes," I said. "Because this place is new and pretty and convenient, and because they expected me to say yes no matter what they did to us first." Rowan was quiet for a beat, then he said, "Well, I like our Christmas better." That was the final twist of the knife and the final stitch in the wound, because I realized my son could already tell the difference between love and access. That night, after Rowan fell asleep, I taped the photo from Milo inside a kitchen cabinet where I'd see it when I reached for plates. Not to punish myself, to remind myself what I was no longer willing to accept. I didn't become someone who hated her family. I became someone who stopped auditioning for them. And when next December comes, I won't wait to see if I make someone else's list. I'll make my own pancakes, will be mandatory. The door will stay locked to anyone who confuses family with entitlement. And Rowan will grow up knowing this truth as a tradition. Our home is not a place you earn by shrinking. It's a place you build by choosing each other.